There we go. So, yeah, I don't necessarily have anything specific to go through. I just, with various assignments at different stages, in different stages of probably consciousness, if anything, but for you guys, towards the back end of semester, I thought the main thing for these Zooms will be a chance for you to directly ask me something or clarify things. So, yes, it's all right. We're doing better. We're 4 times as many as last week. It was just a personal me and Chris last week.
It's like your own private tutorial.
Except Chris was also juggling some other commitments at the same time. So
yes,
I didn't even realise that you had restarted the lectures last week, so there was just no chance of me even joining in.
Yeah, no, that's all right. The lectures are back up, and we've only got 2 more weeks to go, I think. Oh no, three. Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
So it's skipping along very quickly in a blur.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cause anyone more angst.
No, I'm just thinking of what I've got to get done before the end.
See, it's kind of like the opposite. You guys are like, oh, Jesus, there's not much time, whereas I'm like, tick them off.
No, I'm thinking that I did a dry run through my presentation this afternoon, and it worked out at 12 minutes or something. Given there's only 3 of the 5 of us, I mean, if it goes a bit over, I'm not that concerned, but I think I've got to cut that down a bit.
It's hard to fit it all in a time frame.
Yeah, that's it. That's it's better to have that than struggling to make the time. And remember the other, I mean, if it was a real talk, it becomes this fine balance because you have questions. So you want to get people in deep enough, and it also works to your favor because they go, oh, here's a question. You go, yeah, beautiful. I've got this one covered. So then so that's the key, especially if you give talks at scientific conferences, because we get 15 minutes, we have to get a lot of dense information across quickly, but it kind of works to your favor because you go, oh, it's all right. I've got all this stuff that I know. So if I get a curly one, hopefully I've got it covered, but inevitably you always get a curly one and you go, oh, geez.
That's where you need your colleague with you and you turn around to them and say, I think this one's yours.
Yeah, or I'll take that as a comment. So in some ways it's better to have that than go, oh geez, I've got to fill out another half an hour here. What am I going to talk about?
You panic.
Yep.
I did have a question with regards to the presentation.
Sure.
With the slides and pictures and stuff, are we putting references in or copywriting stuff with the images, or are you just happy to have?
So the website's fine. It's free game. The stuff that I provided. Anything else on that, just put a reference in.
Okay.
And it's okay to just, I don't know, depending what the reference is, if it's a website, you just put the link there. If it's a reference to a paper, you usually just put the name and date, and you can just flash at the end that there's a slide with references on it. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't expect you to talk on the reference if you go, you're in Sean's case, you're at 12:01. You go, and by the way, here's the references.
Okay, so just put a second of a reference slide at the end.
Yes, that's
you'll
fine.
Be happy.
Yeah.
So with that, during the presentation of the slides, do you want us? What's that type of reference where you just put like a subscript or a superscript number, and then that's how you reference the? Or do you want us to do something like that?
Well, I'm not too fussed when it comes to lecture, to talk stuff. The one that I usually use is I just go with a what would the style be? The Harvard sort of style. So I'll just go, Chris 2015, and then I will usually just put I don't know, an abbreviation for the journal it might be in. So you just might go I don't know, JPET, which is Journal of Petrology or something like that.
Okay.
That's how I usually give my talk ones, and because we don't usually put a reference list at the end, so people give enough to sort of go, oh, okay, I can find Chris's paper from that much information.
Okay. All right.
So that's
Okay.
fine.
So,
But if you're really tight on space or something like that, you can go to footnotes. But then, yeah, I think it's easier just to put a name and a date.
okay. Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah, that'll be fine. And so you don't have to have my name all the way through there, because I've done the dodgy anyway. As you know, it's so I'm covering as much myself as I am covering you.
I mean, just sort of taking that the next step further, I've gone through and done all the economics and stuff out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So building up the volumes, the mass of the rock and whatever else. Did you just want the presentation, or do you want the spreadsheet that I've done all the calculations and things on as well?
Just the presentation, yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to trust your maths. Well, at least I'll trust Excel's maths. And
that's good.
That's fine. And so, and on that, like for certain ones, like your section, Sean, I don't really anticipate you'll probably need references, but if you've got some, that's fine.
Oh, yeah. Look, I mean, the closest thing that I might have to a reference, to something needing a reference, we saw in reading through something where it said that the gold size.
Okay, yep.
And like that's it.
Really. Yeah, that's fine. So like, yeah, I don't expect you to be like, this is where I got this number from.
Well, the numbers were made up.
Yeah, I pulled them from.
Literally, they either came from what was on the references that you gave us, the website that you gave us, or it's a calculation. That's it.
Yeah. Well, and those numbers that I put on the website are definitely made up. So yeah, that's completely fine. Yeah.
That will be why it didn't come out very well then.
Yeah. Well, I started to do it and I was like, oh, this is going to take a lot of work to get this to come out, because most of them I assume won't come out. So I'm like,
good. I don't feel so bad about it then.
Yeah. Because then I was like, then I'd get to a point where I essentially have to have 5 different numbers for each site to try and get it to work, and you're like, oh, this is just getting too ungainly. I mean, there's a simple reason why they're still sitting there with no one mining them.
Oh well, that's. I mean, the interesting thing about Tim Barrow is I found one. Literally, the exploration lease has just changed hands again.
Oh, okay.
So within the last year.
Yeah. Okay. It's a reasonably big system, but I don't think the grades are there. Because when you look, you've got a small part of it, but when you actually look further around, there's a couple more porphyries there. It's just.
I think there's some, from what I've seen, there's some significant issues in terms of access and whatever else. One of the other things which I did see is that after the mine closed in 99 or 2000 or whatever it was, they actually had their tailings dam fail.
Oh, okay. And there's it goes off to a big cliff.
Yeah. So it was they were talking about the volume of rainfall in the region made it difficult.
And then we went into a drought.
Yeah.
But actually the PhD student of co-supervising, he was out there recently and he said that they have quite serious fences around the tailings dam. So that probably explains why.
Yeah.
Because he was like, this doesn't really make much sense, because it was mostly would have been cyanide processing on site.
Yeah.
So there would have been limited contamination risks left. But yeah, okay, there you go. Tailings.
That would probably be it then.
Yep. Well, I know someone else that so all these big retirement or superannuation funds.
Yep.
They've essentially got all these people to actually assess tailings risks and things like that. So the mining companies are actually getting pressure directly from their investors. So these big super funds and pension funds and things like that pay academics to go out and say, oh, this is can you go and tell us how bad this is? And so we can sort of force the mines to actually do something. Yeah.
I just like there's a picture which is commonly used. It's one of the historic mining sites, gold mining sites up in Queensland, where they've got the pit, which is now full of water, which is just, I think it's bright blue or something.
Yep.
It's just unlike just no vegetation anywhere around it.
Yep. Yeah, there's a few up here that are like that. My favorite one actually is, it's not a tailing system, but it was an old arsenic mine, and they have the roasters there. So they had all these beautiful old brick roasters that go up a hill, because you essentially put the arsenic ore into the roaster.
Morgan, I think, mentioned this one to me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then so what's happened is, so then the arsenic essentially drops out as salts. So the bricks are coated in this material and then people used to go in and scrape them off the walls.
Yeah.
What a great job. And supposedly there was no deaths at the mine, but they shut the mine and then all the bricks have disappeared because the locals in the town were using them for their barbecues and things like that. It's just crusted in arsenic. You're like, oh yeah, this looks perfect.
It keeps the rats away from the barbecue.
Well, yeah. It keeps most things away from the barbecue. Yeah. So it's good for us because you can actually see in and see all the arsenic secondary minerals from the roasting. But yeah.
Just another question on the assignments that we've got.
Mm-hmm.
The virtual field trip.
Yeah, I think that's going to get. Well, I'm pretty confident that's going to get canned.
Okay.
Because at the moment, I can't go and do it. It hasn't been done. So.
Right. Okay.
And we're running out of time. So.
That was another one that was a tiny amount of marks. I think it was only 2 or 3 marks or something.
So I'll subsume the rest into something else. I think I made something else work too. So I guess I'll make.
Yeah. The alteration geochemistry was 3.
Yeah. So it'll just bump it up
to 5 or whatever it is.
Yeah. But the prospect of me getting out to record anything and also in the time frame to go, oh, by the way, there's a week to go and here's all this stuff you've got to do again, just doesn't seem very fair. So
okay, I won't worry about that one then.
Yep. You don't have to, watch videos of random places in the New England.
Yeah. That's fine. I'm just ticking things off my list.
Yep. Well, that's always nice when you go, excellent, that's gone.
Yep, absolutely.
So I think what's left, so after this Friday, you'll be down to all minerals, sufficient geochemistry, sufficient deposits and Mount Mag.
Yeah, so all minerals is a bit of work because you've got to go through each of the mineral specimens. So the sufficient deposits I'm not concerned about. That's just a quiz, I think.
Yes. Yep.
And I haven't looked at Mount Mag at all.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think it shouldn't be, and I'm happy to push out the due dates depending how people are traveling. But I guess we'll get to a point where you're starting to encroach on the exam time.
Yeah. Look, the dates are there. I'll work towards the dates. It's just that I haven't done anything for it yet.
Yeah.
That's just me. I mean, I just until it's due.
Yeah, no, that's all right. That's how most people work. Stress is an amazing driver of work.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I think the all mineral ones is not too bad in terms of it just takes sitting down and going through it.
Yeah, but that's what I assumed. It's just a time-consuming thing because I gather most of the time will actually be there looking at the minerals and filling in the boxes that you've got there.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's, I suppose, in many ways the bit that concerns me because given that I'm only doing one subject per trimester, and I'm off-site anyway, I don't sort of get that repeat look at things to build up that database, if you like, inside the head to look at something and say that's what that is. I have to go back and actually check things off the list, so to speak.
So that's right. Well, and I don't know if it's better or worse, but you probably haven't seen many of these ones before. But yes, no, that is certainly because essentially that's how I operate when I identify minerals. It's like this, it looks like a duck, sounds like a duck. It's probably a duck. That's how it works. And the old adage is the best geologist is the one that's seen most rocks. So it is hard. You just got to it's one of those things that you.
Yeah, and we were talking to Ed about that last trimester as well, and he said, look, that's basically what it is. He's got a set of rules that he uses to sort of tick off sort of the major things. Is it this or this, and then heads off to the next question in that direction. Yes. So after about 4 or 5 questions, he said you're basically pretty close.
Yeah, and that's the hardest part is sort of learning those rules, because like from personal experience, I won't be able to remember, I don't know, the streak of certain minerals, or different certain ones will have different properties, and it's because it's just like, well, I know that to distinguish quartz from calcite, I need hardness or cleavage.
I mean, for me, the things where I struggle, and it's at least in part because I just haven't looked at enough rocks to see it, is things like distinguishing between orthoclase and plagioclase.
Oh, that's the hardest one.
And like where it's obvious, I mean, it's fine, and certainly thin sections, that's obviously a much easier thing to do.
You haven't looked at metamorphic rocks yet, man.
that's next year.
But and on those ones, honestly, like I've been out in the field with geologists with 30 years experience, and they can't pick them.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. To me, that's just something where it's all about the number of times you look at something.
No, definitely.
I look at a page of numbers, and I can look at the number and say that one's wrong, because it just doesn't work in the rest of the page. But I'm just not there looking at the box with that sort of thing.
Well, that's and in all honesty, the other thing that geologists rely a lot on microscopes, and even now these days, people that should be good at optical petrography rely a lot on instruments. So it's in many ways it's kind of a dying thing, which is sad. But you go out with a lot of geologists, and they're just like, oh, I don't know, I send this to Paul Ashley and he tells me what it is. You go, oh god, And
so you got to go out with somebody who lives out in the bush somewhere, and they don't actually have access to all the technology.
But like you say, you force yourself. You go, oh, what is this? And if someone's there, well, how did you pick this one, or something like that? Can you point it out? And so, for me, the rules I usually form back to form, so the crystal shape or habit. That's very important. That's usually my first sort of go, is like, what shape is it forming? That'll guide me to what I think next. Color generally will also give you an impression, and then sort of into cleavage. Right. And then once I'm working down into things like hardness, unless I know a specific test like quartz calcite, if I see a vein, I just scratch it and I go, all right, great, it's calcite because it's scratched with my hammer. Or magnetic or something like that, you're starting to get to a point where you're sort of like, it's one of these two minerals and this is the test I need. And so, that's my sort of rules. I rarely use streak, unless it's hematite, magnetite, what other ones are there? Oh, they're the main ones. Yeah. So I sort of end up working towards 3 main ones. Oh, luster colors sort of are hand in hand. Yeah. And then you'll find next year that you go, oh my god, microscopes, it's almost even more complicated.
Well, I did the one with Ed, so that's not the metamorphic rocks. I've still got to do that one. So I have done the thin sections, and that's what I'm saying. So something like plagioclase, orthoclase is much more obvious
Yes.
once you start looking at it through thin sections.
And remember, the other thing to remember is in plain polarized light, the properties are the same. You know, okay, so the color is going to be slightly different, but it's usually a reflection of what the mineral looks like in nature. And
Yep.
you know, the twins, the cleavage, they're all properties that haven't changed just because we put it under a microscope. Of course, birefringence and things like that are complicated, and extinction angles, but you know.
Yeah, but I mean, those sorts of things, you're only going to be looking at them in a lab, realistically. And that's why you have the table sitting next to you, giving you the numbers that are there.
Yeah.
Or you stick it in some very nice computer, which then does the analysis for you.
Yeah, it's called Paul Ashley. You know, so yeah, it's funny because a lot of former students from uni are like, oh yeah, we just send it to Paul, but he never just tells us straight up what the rock is. We have to read his bloody whole thing. It's almost like he's making them suffer through. Like, this is some weird, you know, obscure secondary molybdenite mineral that most people have never heard of. But yeah, so and in the end, especially with all minerals as well, again, and same with most minerals, is there's sort of minerals and minerals. It's a bit like, you know, the communist system. Some matter more than others, you know, and you partly refining that down. So, you know, like with the common rock forming minerals, you end up only worrying about.
Yeah, I mean, had limited exposure to it, but and maybe I just went through the one where you had the different the lecture where you had the different copper minerals.
Yeah.
I mean, in the end there, a mining group probably isn't that concerned whether they're getting bornite or chalcopyrite. They're more concerned about the copper content and can they extract it.
Yeah.
Now I know that comes back down a little bit to the type of rock that the actual mineral it is as well. But if it's something which is sort of in that general area and has somewhat similar properties, then they're not going to care. Like if it's malachite or azurite that they're getting,
no,
they're not going to care.
Yeah, it'll just change the metallurgy a little bit, but someone should.
Well, yeah. Somebody down the line when they need to actually do the processing will need to worry about it.
Yeah.
But in terms of the geo that's there, he's just going to say, "Oh, look, there's X number of tons of contained copper."
Yeah. So we just have to make sure that he's not, you know, all of a sudden it's, you know, in the gold case. It's just like there's heaps of gold, but it's all in stibnite. But yes, you know, like, and the secondary, especially secondary ore minerals, there's lots, you know, so don't get bogged down with that. You know, I would say it's more important that you work through things like the oxides and the sulfides as a rule of thumb, and then start to be like, oh, this is a kind of secondary ore mineral, so it's got a slightly, because as you can see, there's a lot of different possibilities for copper about which one will be there, and they're probably all there, really. You'd be like, oh, there's azurite, there's
I mean,
there's cavellite.
The ASX reports that I've seen, like you basically get, well, they don't even talk about, they talk about oxides, sulfides, and that's probably the distinction that they make. If you talk to the analysts themselves and to the companies, then they go down to something like, they probably don't even distinguish between the different types of oxides. Then you get chalcocite, chalcopyrite, and bornite, and that's probably about it.
Yeah. So so focus on those ones, and you'll they're the key one, you know, like, and you'll quickly find that you'll be like, oh, how do I pick pyrite from chalcopyrite? Well, pyrite usually has the cubic form, or, you know, things like that. And you're like, okay. And the hardest one is usually pyrrhotite pyrite. But, you know, you can only do what you can do when it's not magnetic. And and then in 305 when you do it, we do reflected light microscopy of all samples because most of them are opaque, so it's a slightly different style of microscopy.
Yep.
So
got a while to wait for that.
okay, yeah, you're working your way through the second year ones first.
Yeah, I think I'm most of the way through the twos.
Yep.
I think it's only the metamorphic rocks one that I've got to do there, but obviously there's a bunch of options and things that have to happen along the way as well.
Well, yeah, I guess, yeah, because then you can probably start threes before 208.
Yeah, well, it'll just work in terms of that will more depend on when it's offered next year, and I haven't looked at that. So what trimester it's being offered in?
It'll be T2. It's usually a T2 one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I need to have something to fill in T1 anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the first elective next trimester anyway, over Christmas.
Oh, okay. What are you doing?
Soil or something.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah.
It was no, it wasn't soil. I can't remember. It was a pretty basic one.
Oh, that's all right.
It was something to tick a box.
Yep. Yeah.
And get it done.
Yeah. Well, that's what it starts to feel like at the end of your degree.
Earth surface systems.
Earth surface systems. Oh, that doesn't sound too bad.
GEPL 106.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
You've done that one, Chris?
Yeah, that rang a bell.
Yeah.
That one was pretty good.
Pretty sure it's the geomorphology one.
Yeah. Well, geomorphology is always nice.
Yeah, it's pretty good when I did it, I believe. Fun.
Does come in handy. That'll be all right.
I think it was more just talking about like the sedimentary sort of side of it, like the alluvial stuff and all that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine. It works.
Yeah. Well, it's a handy thing to have.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of all fitted in terms of timing. I sat down with Ed last trimester when we went up to Lake Keepit for 10 minutes just to say, look, this is what I'm trying to achieve.
Yep.
Realised, point me in the right direction, make sure that I'm actually doing the right things. And he pointed out I actually had interpreted things wrong anyway. So
okay. Well, that's probably not necessarily your fault. It's probably because it's delivered in an opaque way.
I think what the instructions that we get, my daughter is doing medical science and
yes,
at New South Wales, and I gather that her website is just diabolical.
Yep.
So I think what we get is actually pretty good. It's just that I misinterpreted one thing, and it was only one thing that I needed to change.
Because they're changing it, just to add to it. They're changing the course structure. I don't think it'll affect you because you'll probably get grandfathered. But the other, I don't know when that comes in. Because even for me, like, I did my degree at Sydney, so I come here and you're sort of like, what? How does this thing work? What is, you can just, it's amazing how you just sort of like, I know this. It doesn't necessarily mean how it was done in Sydney was good. It's just that's what I'm familiar with. And so just trying to get things around it. But that's good. Yeah. Have we got any other main questions?
I did have a question from the textbook.
Oh, okay. This is the Rob?
The all mineral one, not the mineral, not the mineral science. Yep. The other one.
All right, I'll do my best because I don't have it in front of me. It's stuck in the office.
Yeah, no, that's it. So because it says, in relation to, but it says the lower mantle contains more water than the upper mantle.
Okay.
But I was wondering why that would be the case. I thought there would have been more pressure and heat lower, so it would have been less water.
this is where it comes into a thing is, well, one, we don't really know. We're making sort of broad assumptions. So usually, I think the story is the mantle volumetrically, because the mantle volumetric is the mantle so big. There's more water in the mantle than there is on in all the oceans on the surface, and that's just it's a volume game. You calculate the radius. What is it? 29,000 kilometers. Most of that's the mantle. Even if you have it in grades of 0.005%, it's a lot of bloody water. So the additional factor is what's controlling the water getting into the mantle. And that's usually subduction zones. So there's a bit of water that would have been there originally, potentially, although that's unknown. Like when Earth was forming and differentiating, did we have water as an element on Earth, or did water come on a comet? So people don't know that. That's still very debated. People sort of think it might have come on a comet, but there was probably some water around, or at least hydrogen. So then we go into how water has been getting into the mantle now, and that's through subduction zones. And so then it becomes a game of most of it gets released in the very upper portions, and it gets recycled back into the crust and into the atmosphere, but some can get taken to great depths, and the slabs go into the lower mantle. And then it comes into a game of essentially mineralogy. So most of the water in the mantle is in things like olivine. And so, but olivine changes in essentially any of the olivine polymorphs. There's a few varieties that have different densities. They're not stable in the lower mantle anymore. So you actually have different phases that people think can have more water in them.
Yeah, okay.
But we can't go down there and look. The deepest evidence that we get from those conditions comes largely from diamonds. So we have inclusions in diamond, and most of the time most of the inclusions are from about 600 kilometers in depth. So most of it comes from experimentation. So people run experiments at very high pressures and go, oh, this should be stable, and how much water can be in this? And does this make sense with geophysics?
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, so very complicated answer to say that's our best guess.
Yeah, okay. No, that's what I did.
Yeah.
It was the diamond section. It was talking about. It's to do with diamonds. So that's what.
Yep.
Makes a bit more sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So and certain diamonds come from very great depth, and some don't. So I think some of the Brazilian ones have the best inclusions from things like the lower mantle.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Hey. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. Because it talks about as well the upper mantle being more reduced, and higher carbon content, along with more water in the lower.
Yeah.
So that makes it so if you got higher carbon content.
Yeah. So the carbon
potential for diamonds.
Yeah. Again, so carbon is one that's poorly known as well. But they think the lower mantle is essentially is more oxidized because of the core, because we have essentially molten iron and other metals in the core. So people think that might control it, or they're not really sure. But so carbon is actually a redox sensitive phase, because it's usually going to be a CO2 or something like that in a mineral. And so if depending on redox, diamonds can be stable or not stable because of the carbon.
Yeah, okay.
So it's an extra layer there of complexity.
Yeah, okay.
But yes, so people think that it's the carbon gets down there again through subduction, or you have these primordial carbon from the early evolution of the Earth.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So carbon's, as you are fully aware, it's become a bit of a nit thing. So in the last sort of decade or so, science has really been actually trying to figure out where carbon is stored in Earth and the sort of big carbon cycles. So people have a fair idea of how it works on the surface, but things like carbon and water, we don't know what the long-term storage in Earth is like. And is there carbon down there, or how does it exist, and things like that.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
So what are their best ideas for it at the moment? Do they think it is?
Where they think it is?
Like, where do they think it's stored? Like, what are their best ideas for it?
There's a variety of wacky ones. But you know, like, so they think there's a fair bit of carbon. They think there's a fair bit of carbon sitting in the roots of cratons, because that's where diamonds broadly come from. And they also think there's some locked up in the transition zone. So the mantle transition zone starts at 400 kilometers and ends at 660 kilometers. And they think slabs actually stall there. So subduction slabs go down, then there's a density contrast. That's why we can geophysically observe that transition zone, and the slabs essentially flatten. And so they think that
just kind of
the carbon and water can actually get captured there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But you know, so they can continually thinking about it, but like I say, it's something that's very hard to test. But you know, they look at things like diamonds and what depths diamonds are coming from, and a lot of diamonds capture inclusions from that transition zone from around 600 kilometers depth. So there's limited capture of material from the lower mantle, which sort of suggests that maybe they're not coming from those depths.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. But as is always with geology, it's a question of, is it because it's exceptionally well preserved, or it's not preserving something? So, you know, are we preserving material from that depth for a specific reason, or is it telling us that's something about the nature of Earth?
Yeah, always a bit of a guessing game.
Yeah. There's plenty of shades of grey in geology.
Yeah.
It usually ends up doing students' head-ins eventually. Especially structural geology, you know. Well, it could be that, but it could also be this. Well, what's the right answer?
Yeah, I'm doing 208 at the moment. Gets a bit wacky every now and again.
Yep. But that's the part I enjoy, because then you go, okay, well, we've got to come to a best solution instead of, you know, we're not engineers.
I do like that there's no like certain right and wrong answer. Sometimes it does feel good to just know.
Yeah.
And always just be questioning.
Yeah, I completely understand that. I don't know. This comes back to what we were talking about before, Sean. But you probably heard the joke about the engineering joke about geologists. You give 10 geologists concrete, you'll get 9 different answers, with only one of them being concrete.
Okay, no, I hadn't heard that, but yeah.
Yep.
Variations on it for all different sorts of businesses.
Yeah. Well, there's the geology one. And in my experience, it's generally fairly true, which is scary.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've dealt with more lawyers and I've heard the lawyer variations.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, they're a whole new killer fish. So anything else? We're all pretty happy.
Yep. I just got to sit down and do some work.
No worries. Cut off 9 minutes of your talk.
Yes. Well, at least it's a lot easier to cut things out than it is to add things in.
Yes. Yeah. Just get the big red pen out.
Yep. And when I did the test, I mean, it was deliberately spoken very slowly and proper gaps in between and things as well. So, and there's a bunch of stuff in there which is just, it can have a red pen put through it.
And my rule of thumb is usually 1 slide per minute, but I think you could be at 1 slide 30 seconds.
Yeah, a lot of the slides that I've got are numbers, so I can flip through those pretty quickly.
Yeah,
and it's probably only 1 or 2 things in there that I really need to highlight out of them.
Yeah, here's the important one.
Yep.
We didn't make money, or we did make money.
Yep.
No worries. Anything from you, Finn, or?
Nah, I'm pretty good.
Yep, you're just getting settled back in.
I was just doing a lot of other assignments. I haven't really had much time to work on this one, so I'm just going through it now.
No worries. And Chris, you're all right?
Yeah, I think so now. Should be happy.
Excellent. So you went okay with your volume estimates in the end?
I think so. I've got values there, but whether they're correct or not.
Excellent.
If it's any help, I went through about 4 or 5 different iterations of my pit plan.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. That's it. You get a figure and you're like, I don't know.
Seems okay.
Could that be right? Or
just convert it all to, the standard unit of measurements. How many, Sydney harbours it would be equate to.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
This will equate to 10 Sydney harbours. And I always go, I don't know, is that a lot? Where is it finding the harbour? Does it include Middle Harbour? Does it go all the way out to Parramatta River? Can't we talk in something that's a bit more metric? Maybe Olympic swimming pools is probably a bit easier.
Picture that.
Yeah. And assume the depth is the same. I assume it's all the same depth or whatever. Yeah.
That's the easiest. If we can assume all half the values, then we're all right.
Well, exactly. And I'm happy for you to Photoshop the Sydney Harbour full of ore if you're that way inclined. To say, this is how much we're pulling out.
That's that extra 2% from the field trip you can get.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, surely Queenslanders mustn't talk about Sydney harbours, though. They must have something else, brown snake or something.
I don't know if I've ever seen one for up here.
Okay.
I think that, I don't know where I saw the main one I keep seeing is for social distancing, so different scale, but to like a kangaroo length apart or something.
Well, that's a bit of a challenge for Sydney siders.
Yeah, I might have saw it in Broome. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, okay. A couple of emus over there, maybe.
Yeah.
Just be worried when they're like just 2 inland taipans apart.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I'll leave them to themselves.
Yeah, I don't want to get near them. Big eastern brown snakes usually get up to about 2 meters. So, all right, I will leave you to it. As always, drop a line if you need me, and we'll go from there.
All right, thank you.
Have a good rest.
Thank
you for that.
Cheers.
See you guys.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.